Now, what about new love disorders? It's going to be a special talk I'm going to give you, because I'm preparing a book on that. Therefore, I have bits and pieces up to now, which and a main guideline, but it's a work in progress. So I tell you why. How did it came to my mind to do such a research? First, as a psychoanalyst, hearing all day long discourse, analysant discourse about the question of love and sex, I couldn't be deaf to the fact that something was changing in love life. I say love life, and I don't want to elucidate more the term love life, because it's just as much as sex and love. It's a mix of sex and love, and it's always like that, including in psychoanalysis. Including in psychoanalysis, it's very difficult to differentiate between love and sex. Eros, which is a major Freudian signifier, has to do with the erotical field and with love field. For this mixture of sex and love is not only in the common language, but is in psychoanalytical theory too. Even if there was an effort to clarify it, two different fields, the field of love from the field of desire, the field of desire from the field of jouissance, but in, let's say, in the acts and in the speech, the analysant speech, it's very often totally all opposed, but if it's opposed, it's the sign that it's mixed up too. So first of all, I had the idea that something was changing in those matters, that there was apparition of new symptoms or new patterns in love life. I give you just a small example, which we can afterwards develop, and which is going to be one of the field of that book. If you read Freud and Lacan, you find a lot of reference about DORA, the hysterical paradigm, let's say, both for Freud and then for Lacan, paradigma elaborated and re-elaborated during the whole seminars, and the young homosexual girl, which is another paradigm in Freud. Very clearly, Freud is convinced that in one case you got an hysterical structure of the subject, and in the other case, the young homosexual, a perverse structure. And that's the reason why he doesn't want to take the young homosexual in analysis. Lacan is mentioning a lot that in the seminar 10, the anxiety. And he goes up to the point to qualify Freud's position in relation to the young homosexual as a passage à l'acte and not an acting out. That is to say, the way that Freud has to get rid of the young homosexual, to let her down, which is exactly the opposite of what happens to him with Dora, where precisely he is the one who is left down by Dora. A little more about that. If you read what Freud writes, to start with, and in 23, when he republished the case, you have a lot of mentions of observation by Freud about Dora's homosexuality. Except that, in a position with a young homosexual, she is not in a revendication, in an homosexual revendication, nor in an homosexual acting, let's say. Well, in my clinic, let's say, I happen to hear more and more frequently young women, or not so young women, but generally young women, who, having an hysterical structure, having had, in general, before, masculine partners, sometimes having been married, sometimes having or not having children, in a moment of their life, start an homosexual relation with a woman. Active homosexual relation with a woman, and sometimes even, and very frequently, more and more frequently, start living with a woman. Without, let's say, being a homosexual, lesbian, militant. You say militant? Mm-hmm. Not really politically engaged in that fight for the rights of homosexual people, but acting it in everyday life, which does not prevent them from thinking that they can have children, even as homosexual couples, that they can live their life with these women, and that they can have, including men lovers, out of their, let's say, main homosexual relationship. Well, I think it's something new. And I wanted to try to understand what was going on. For that reason, I reread everything about Dora, everything about the young homosexual, which, by the way, I think is not pervert, but is psychotic. We can say that now by the publications about her life, and writings that was published after her death. Anyway, my hypothesis then is the following. You know that Lacan, mentioning homosexuality, Dora's homosexual tendencies, I would say, elaborate a model with three elements: DORA, Lady K, and Mr. K. And the model is the following one. DORA is interested by Lady K as the woman with capital W. Therefore, she is interested in the mystery of femininity, which is a mystery for her. And Lacan says, just as Freud could, let's say, constate too, that nevertheless she's more or less in love with Mr. Key. And Lacan formalized the scene around the lake where she gives her a slap in the face as the moment where the position of Mr. Key in the trio appears, calling it l'homme de paille. How do you say that?
Straw. Man of straw. Man of straw.
Well, it's a word that you use when you take someone to act as if he was, let's say, the chief, when he's not. He's used by. You must have a word for that in English. Well, never mind. You understand it. So, Lacan says that she, Dora, is using Mr. K this way. She's using Mr. K as the proof of Mrs. K femininity, or magnificent femininity. The love that Mr. K is having for Mrs. K is really the basis of the interest she's got in Mr. K. And when he says that Mrs. K is nothing for him, therefore he loses any interest for Dora. So I was wondering if those new hysterical patients, out of, let's say, civilization changes, do not need any longer any man of straw, that they can go right on the basis of their, let's say, father-orientated position, father-sustaining position, or masculine sustaining position, helping position, or sustain is a better word, that they can go straight where they locate femininity, which is certainly what they cannot assume or bear. And I must say, I think that's the case. Listening to those young patients, it's absolutely what happens. They choose some woman as extreme ideals of femininity, whatever elements, singular elements, is for themselves the nec plus ultra of femininity, which is different from one patient to another, of course. So that kind of, let's say, clinical changes, and others too. For example, we have, I don't know in Ireland, but in France we have more and more people organizing their love life and research out of those internet, I don't know how to call it, internet moteur de recherche, research motor, like Mythique or whatever. And we start to have a lot of, let's say, subjective testimony of the use of those possibilities, new possibilities of love and sexual encounters. And that to produce a new love life, in a way. Not only new kind of encounters, but new styles of relationship. For example, long-time virtual relationships. That is to say, relationship without body. Evans. And at the time when bodies meet, something like a real difficulty and frequently a failure if it's been delayed too long a time.